Hi everyone, welcome to One Degree Hotter's Student Stories segment, where we tell real stories of today's students. There are so many ways to go about pursuing your education, but we often only hear the typical story, where once you graduate from high school, you move away to college, and then you get a job right after you graduate. That story has never been the only story, and it's also becoming less and less common. That's why I share real stories that you can learn from and be inspired by. That way you are empowered with knowing that there are many ways of getting 1 degree hotter. Today, I am super excited to be interviewing someone very special. I am interviewing my sister today. My sister Anna is a graduate of San Jose State University. She has a BA in journalism, is a professional baker, and has been a lifelong foodie. She has attended not only one, not two, but three colleges to complete her college degree. And I think that that's worth highlighting because it is not a story that we hear about a lot, but it happens a lot more often than you would think. That's exactly why we're going to be talking with her today. Anna's story inspired me because it's one of doing what's best for you, even if it goes outside of what others expect. Anna initially attended UC Davis with the goal of living the traditional college experience. After a while, though, she decided that that path wasn't for her, and she decided to forge her own. If you've ever changed your mind or have been worried about having to make one correct life-altering decision, you won't want to miss this one. Anna, welcome. So excited to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Anna, let's get started right away. I would love to learn about your journey. Let's start with learning about you. Tell us about yourself.
Well, right now I am a pastry baker, and that's actually been pretty much a lifelong passion for me ever since the age of 8. I really enjoy cooking and baking. I am a cat mom of 2 cats. I got my degree in journalism, and still to this day I really like to deep dive into different topics pretty much as my hobby. So that's me.
Nice, thank you. And right now, tell us where you're working now and where you worked before this job.
So right now I'm working at the Meta campus under a company named Flagship as a pastry baker. And basically what we do is we make baked goods for the employees at the Meta Sunnyvale campus. And before that, I used to work at Susie Cakes Willow Glen, also as a pastry baker. And I was a lead at one point as well.
Awesome, thank you. Well, let's start from the beginning of your education. I'd love to learn more about what your K through 12 education was like.
I went to a bilingual immersion school that was a K through 8 school.
Yay, we have a kitty visitor. Who is this?
Oh, this is Pixie, my little cat. We just got her last year.
She's so cute. Anyway, yeah, tell us more about your K through 12 education.
Yes. And so after middle school, I went to Lincoln High School, which is a performing arts school. And there I was in dance and I was in band. It was very fun. Really, I enjoyed it. I had a good high school experience. That's also where I met my boyfriend.
Nice, thank you. Throughout all of this, can you think about what you learned about going to college when you were young? Like, what messages did you receive about college throughout your education?
I pretty much learned that college was almost crucial to having a good career, and to expanding your opportunities. And also, I feel like going to a 4-year college was kind of the focus a lot of the times. But after that, I learned, there's many different routes aside from just.
And where did you mostly hear these messages from?
I think it was both from family and also from school. Like we had, I forgot what it was called. It was a program that was supposed to help kids get into college. And so I feel like those kinds of programs. I feel like also kind of from family, but it's also important to keep in mind, our parents' generation, for example, lived in a very different time.
While you were in high school, you were probably thinking about applying to college at a certain point. Like, what were you thinking? Like, what was the idea? What was the plan that you had? How are you feeling about going on this journey of applying to college? Tell me about all that stuff.
Well, man, first of all, it was such a long time ago, but I do remember feeling very confused and very unsure about what I wanted to do. All I knew this whole time was that I was interested in food and that I wanted to do some kind of career in culinary. So when I looked at colleges, it didn't really reflect that. There wasn't really a space in colleges to go into that. So I definitely felt very confused about what I wanted to do. I know I was being encouraged to apply to a four-year college because in high school I got pretty good grades. So I was encouraged that if I could get into a four-year to go for that. But I do remember there was a part of me that wanted to go to community just because I was very unsure about what I wanted to do. And then also, I wasn't sure if I wanted to leave home. I ended up, I think, initially deciding I was gonna major in nutrition. Of course, because it's food related. Also, because I had had some struggles, you know, with disordered eating in the past. And then our family members, a lot of them had diabetes and heart disease. So it was kind of something I was pretty passionate about.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it sounds like it makes sense that people were encouraging you to at least keep your options open, right? But internally, you just really weren't sure what you wanted to do. Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
What were some of the messages that you were getting about applying to 4 years?
I think it was more so just that it would be easier. Like, for example, if I went to a four-year and decided after that I wanted to go to like a state school or a community college, it would be easier to go from a four-year to that than the other way around. So I was told that the safest option was to go to a four-year.
Gotcha, that makes sense. And what were you hearing from your peers around you at that same time?
I don't think I really got a lot of messages from my peers. I do know a lot of my friends went to state schools, but I didn't hear too much about college from my peers. It's not really something we talked about too much.
You did end up ultimately applying to 4-year colleges, right? So,
Mhm.
how did that feel if you were like still unsure and you were being encouraged or maybe pressured a little bit to apply to 4 years? How did that process feel?
It was definitely very nerve-wracking and a little bit stressful. I remember writing my application, though, was it wasn't too bad because, like I said, I had decided I was going to go the nutrition route. So I just started looking up schools that had nutrition major. And for my personal essay, I ended up writing basically about what I had just mentioned, like my past and then also my family members. And so that part actually really wasn't too bad. And that also made me realize that I was pretty good at writing. I feel like that's always been an interest and a strength of mine. So, yeah, the application process was not too bad, but I do remember feeling, a little bit unsure.
Okay, well, you did end up ultimately applying to 4-year colleges and you ended up getting into a few schools, and the one that you decided to go to was UC Davis. Why did you choose UC Davis?
I chose Davis, I think because it was relatively close by, and then also because they had a good nutrition program, and then also they had other like food related majors. I think they had like a agriculture and food system major, and then they had a lot of like farming stuff over there, and so it just seemed kind of like a cool place to go.
So then, what was your experience at UC Davis like? What did you enjoy and what did you maybe not enjoy so much? I imagine maybe the smell of cow poop was one of the things that you wouldn't enjoy as much, but tell us what you liked and what you didn't like.
The cow smell actually, it really wasn't that bad, but um, it was a struggle. Well, that's one of the main things that I remember. It was tough, and not just academically. I think life wise as well. I think because I was so unsure of what I wanted to do, it kind of was difficult for me to have the motivation to handle the workload. Another thing I realized in college is, I mean, it sounds kind of obvious, but it's very different from high school. I feel like just because you do well in high school doesn't necessarily mean you'll do well in college. It's a very different setting. Obviously, it's a lot more independent. High school's a lot more structured. And, even in high school, I was kind of getting away with doing my assignments pretty last minute. But in college, that didn't work out very well. You really need to plan, manage your time pretty far in advance. Another thing that happened is I felt a little silly about this, but I didn't realize that Davis was a research school. I didn't realize the difference between a research school and a liberal arts school, which is kind of important because, as I mentioned before, I had strength for writing. And sure, I was going into nutrition because of my love for food. And, sure, I liked learning about nutrition mostly through content, I would say, like YouTube and stuff. But that's very different from majoring in nutrition, which is a science major, which it seems obvious, but I wasn't thinking about that at the time. And so I was taking these chemistry classes and these really, at least to me, it felt very advanced science classes. And it just hit me like a truck, I was like, wow. And mind you, I had kind of scraped by high school chemistry, and it was not working out in a college setting. And I actually started doing very poorly in my classes. And on top of that, in my life, certain things were happening. I lost a friend. A friend passed away my freshman year, and being away from home affected me way more than I thought it would. So I was pretty depressed, my first year of college. And talking to some of my other peers at the time, I realized that was actually a pretty common experience. So that's actually pretty important for people to know. I guess you don't think that those kinds of changes are going to affect you. And to some people, they don't. Some people have a great time, but yeah, it was just not good. So I felt very sad, very lonely. I wasn't interested in my classes at all. I just didn't want to be there.
Yeah, that sounds tough.
Yeah, not to be all doom and gloom, but yeah, I just didn't have. I didn't feel my purpose in being there, and I just didn't really see the point anymore. That being said, there were some parts that I really like about Davis, and I would still like to go back and visit. The campus is very beautiful. I still think their programs are very cool. I like the environment. It's a very, very quiet, very peaceful, a lot of space to ride around on your bike. It's beautiful, beautiful. And then I was vegan at the time, so they had vegan clubs and a lot of vegan options. And I did get involved in a vegan club, and I was the president of the club. And I worked with PETA also, doing events like demonstrations about animal agriculture and animal welfare. I also lived on the co-op for some time, and they were called the domes, so they looked like little domes. And we would have potlucks there, I think, on most days, like potluck dinners. And that was actually one of the main reasons that I wanted to live there, because it gave me an excuse to cook for people. So those parts were cool. I did meet through the co-op and the vegan club a handful of pretty cool people. Everyone there was nice, don't get me wrong. But then again, I still didn't feel like I belonged. I think aside from those clubs and stuff, living in the dorms and stuff, I just didn't feel like I clicked with the people there. I mean, you're living on campus, right? Everyone's there to go to college. So everyone's life revolved around school, and that's just not how I thought at the time. So I found it very hard to relate to people And then struggling with my grades made me feel like even more of an outcast because I would hear people being like, oh my gosh, I got a B. Meanwhile, I was like literally on academic probation because I was doing so poorly. So it was tough. It was tough, but there were definitely some good parts.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that. It sounds like it was very hard, but I appreciate you being really honest about it being really tough because I think you said it exactly right. Like, not everybody expects for moving away to college to be potentially a really challenging situation. I think we just see the image of, like, you confidently going away and moving into your dorm and everything is fine and you like meet new people and you go to parties and you have new experiences.
Yeah.
And that is the case for a lot of people, but not always. And that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you because I think so many people can just feel like they're the only person who is not enjoying their college experience, but they're not. That's okay. I mean, it's not okay. I don't want people to feel depressed, but it's okay for it to not be what you thought it was going to be, and it's okay for you to want something else out of your college experience. So that's exactly why we are talking to you today. So you mentioned something really important. You mentioned that you didn't realize that UC Davis was a research institution
Mm-hmm.
and what that would mean for you and your experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to give a little bit of information about that. In short, a research institution is a college that produces knowledge. So they do research, which is like experiments or interviews, and then they publish articles or books that ultimately that's where the rest of us get our understanding of how the world works. And so when you go to a research institution like UC Davis, you are going to learn how to conduct research and you're going to be eventually expected to produce research even as an undergrad. And so, what that can look like is really rigorous classes where you have to learn, like, you probably learned like the scientific method and control variables and all that stuff, and it can be hard to understand. So, what was the research institution experience like for you?
It was very hard to wrap my head around. And as I mentioned, me being into writing, and then in high school, I did like performing arts, and being into things that I make with my hands. It all seemed very abstract, like just yeah, very abstract is the word that I would use for it. So I learned very quickly what it's like to be in a research school, and to be a science major too. I
Mm-hmm.
quickly learned, math and science, not so much my thing. So I actually did change my major a lot of times while I was in Davis because I was trying so hard to make it work. So I think also my parents were supporting my college education, which I will be forever grateful for. I love them so much. But I think that just added to the pressure and to the guilt that I felt for, not doing well or feeling like it wasn't what I thought it would be. So I really wanted to give it a shot. I tried so hard. I was there for 2.5 years. And then once I realized, okay, nutrition, not for me, I bounced around to some really random stuff. Like, I actually don't even remember how many times I changed my major, but I want to say at one point I changed it to women's studies. I'm not sure why. At another point, I changed it to the food systems and agriculture. I don't remember why I did women's studies. I really don't. I don't know if maybe I thought it was going to have more to do with writing. I don't know. The agriculture and food systems, I was like, okay, this is cool. This is the kind of stuff that I like. But again, it was from a research lens. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was having to come up with questions for research, and it was just not what I expected. I thought it was just very different. So yes, speaking of research, do your research about the kind of school that you're going into because
Yeah.
college is expensive. You want to know what you're getting into and that's what you really want.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think it's just not something that we really talk about in the college application process or like in the process where people are exploring what they want to study or where they want to go to school. We don't really ask like do you want to go to a research institution? Like, that's just often not a question that's asked, and it is a little bit hard to understand like what that's actually going to look like for you as a student. So I'm glad that we're talking to you about that today, because for some people, maybe that's something that's interesting to them, and for others, maybe it's not. I'll also say you don't have to already know how to do research in high school to go to a research
Yeah.
college, right? Like, they're going to teach you how to do that.
Hmm.
But I think what it was for you is it was you were more expecting to like be able to consume information and
Hmm.
then like talk about it,
Yeah.
when really it was consume information, produce information. That's kind of like what the experience is a little bit more like at a research institution.
Yeah.
And then I also appreciate you saying that like you were really trying to make it work. Like, you tried all kinds of other majors to like, try to stay at Davis and make it work. And so yeah, you changed your major a ton of times, and a lot of people change their major several times, even up until like halfway through college. So that is also much more common than people talk about. I think it is talked about a little bit more now. But yeah, it happens a lot. But like, do you kind of remember the moment where you realized, like, shoot, this is a science major?
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment?
Yeah. When I was taking chemistry, obviously you can learn whatever you put your mind to, but it was just not my thing. It was not my thing, and
Yeah.
I think I was very interested in learning about nutrition, like online reading articles and things like that. Not necessarily doing like chemical equations wasn't really what I had in mind. More so, like you said, consuming the information. So big difference.
Yeah. And I think you are just a very practical person. Like you said, you like to work with your hands, you like to like do things, and so you were looking for a more practical approach to nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And you ended up getting, here's how this chemical bond affects I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what in the body. Some people really like that, and you just didn't, and that happens. You also mentioned feeling homesick throughout your time at Davis. If you don't mind, like, tell us a bit
Mm-hmm.
about what that feels like, because I think just how people may not realize that nutrition can be a science, I think people may not realize what homesickness or loneliness feels like too.
Yeah. So in high school, you're like, I mean, hopefully, if you're having a good high school experience, you're surrounded by all your friends every day, right? And so you have your little group, you see them every day. And then if you go away to college, like away from your hometown, it's like all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. I think my best friend at the time was in LA. I had another friend in Arizona, and then the rest of them were back home. And then, especially with family, too, it's like you're not with your family anymore. And I think part of it, like I said, also how I felt like I didn't fit in with a lot of the students there, that also contributed to it. A lot of them, they wanted to be there. So, they liked talking about school and being all about that, and I just couldn't relate to it. And so I think that was a very lonely feeling. And then also, I think, it's gonna sound kind of weird, but I think just growing up in the Bay Area, there's like a certain culture here, and over there it was almost like a little bit of a culture shock. It was just different. I'm not really sure what it was, but at one point I was coming home, I think, like every other weekend. I was taking the Amtrak to come home. I think another thing that contributed to it was everything else that I was going through and having to go through it alone. So that was, yeah, I think that's basically what it was.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everything else, like you said, you had lost a friend, and then you were going through this transition by yourself. Like, yeah, of course, that feels
Yeah.
really shitty.
I'm pretty sure I also got with my boyfriend around that time too, so I also liked coming home to see him as well. And just in general, I'm very attached to my family. I've always been that way. So it was hard being away from them.
Yeah, and that's perfectly valid, right? Like, everybody has different family dynamics or friend dynamics, tolerances for being long distance with family and friends. So for you, it was you just wanted to be closer. And I think other people should be really honest with themselves too about how comfortable they really are about moving away. I've had so many students where they're from California and they're like, oh, I want to go to this school on the East Coast. And I'm like, that's great, let's give it a shot. But I always like wonder, like, are you, like, do you actually want to do that? Are you ready for it? Do you really understand what it looks like day in and day out to be so far away from your community?
Yeah,
It's a big change. And especially if you do it right after high school, you're super young.
yeah.
So, it's not easy.
Yeah, you're still very young. You're still basically like a teenager. So you're dealing with all of that teenager stuff. And then you're putting yourself in another culture. So there's like an element of culture shock a little bit. You're not surrounded by your normal group of people anymore. And so basically, any struggles that you're going through may feel amplified because you're in a completely different environment. And then, not to mention all of that while also trying to handle the workload of college. So it can be a lot. And I know, like I mentioned, I did hear from different people that they were going through the same thing. So it is pretty common. But then also, like I said, it's not always the case. And some people really enjoy the freedom and being away from home and being somewhere new. So I think it's important to start getting to know yourself. I think
Yeah.
part of when you're thinking about college, I feel like it's very easy to be laser focused on the college aspect of it, or what do I want to do like from my career or blah blah blah. But also I think it's important to also uh, start getting to know yourself and like knowing the ways that you like to learn, or the kinds of environments you like to be in, or do you like being close to home and with your family, or do you want to get away? I know, like, for example, my friend um, from Arizona, that really helped her. It helped her to be far away and start a life on her own. So it's important to know that about yourself.
Yeah, you said it really well. There's like the college or academic or career aspect of your choice, but there's also the human part of your choice. And I always try to emphasize that with my students too. Like, are you gonna like the weather? Like, are there things to do there? Do you want it to be kind of quiet and rural?
Mm-hmm.
Are the people your kind of people?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a very personal decision for everybody. I'll say for myself, I moved away for undergrad. I went down to LA from the Bay Area, and I was fine. I remember turning away from all of you, and I didn't even look back. I was nervous, but I didn't even look back. Oh, but then for grad school, it was not the same.
Mm-hmm.
I went to grad school in Michigan, and the weather was very different, very beautiful, but also got legit depressed
Mm-hmm.
from the lack of sunshine in the winter.
Yeah.
And other than my basically Latino community at Michigan, everybody was just not my kind of people, and it was just not the place for me. And so I felt homesick quite a bit as well. So
Yeah.
it can even vary from like educational experience to educational experience for one person. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really just a very personal choice. I'm glad we're talking about this because I feel like, especially students from high school going into college, we don't think about that enough, but like the
Yeah.
personal aspect of it.
Yeah. That being said, though, you want to think about that stuff, but also keep in mind there's going to be a lot of trial and error, so you can't just think your way to a perfect experience. You might have to live it to be able to make up your mind of like whether or not you like something. But yeah.
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 And that was exactly your experience. Like you tried to think it, but you had to live it to really
Yeah.
understand what your preferences were. How did you finally decide that you were done with Davis, that you did not want to be there anymore?
Yeah, so it wasn't so much of a decision as like a necessity, unfortunately, at that point. I think because I tried so hard to make it work, I really burnt out, and it was basically necessary for me to go. I actually ended up leaving halfway through the academic year. I think it was after fall quarter of what was going to be my third year that I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And I had already tried, like I said, I was very depressed. I was crying all the time. And I had tried going to therapy over there, and it kind of helped, kind of not really. I just remember the therapist offering me medication for my feeling depressed, which obviously there's nothing wrong with that. That's a whole other topic. That's like a very personal decision. But I was kind of faced with, do I take this medication to try to continue to power through this experience that's clearly not working, or do I just change the environment that I'm in and see if that helps? And I mean, it had been very clear to me basically since I got there that I didn't want to be there. So I reached a breaking point pretty much. My mental health was in shambles and I just couldn't do it. And then it's with the academic aspect as well. Just the being in a research school and my grades were really bad. There's just so many elements of it were not working out. And I had to do it for like my own mental health and also academically. It just wasn't the path for me.
So did you finish fall quarter?
I think it was a pretty like quick process. I think I was reaching the end of the fall quarter and winter break or something. I think that's why I decided like I should do it now before I start like a whole other quarter. Even though my feelings of not wanting to be there had been there for a very long time, I do remember it somewhat of a pretty sudden decision. I was living at the Domes at the time, and I remember having to tell everybody like I'm not going to be here next quarter, so someone needs to take my spot. And everyone was so sweet and they were like, "Oh, why? What's wrong?" And I was honest. I told them it's just not working out, and everyone was very supportive.
Was this a decision that you feel that you made independently, or did you like talk with our family a lot before like being able to finally come to terms with it?
I'm pretty sure I was talking to my parents the whole time. I've always been very close to my parents, and I'm still very close to them now. I think we all agreed, like, yeah, it's not working out. And at the end of the day, they just want what's best for me. So they were supportive of my decision.
So once you made that decision to leave Davis, how did you feel after that?
I mean, I think I felt both horrible and relieved. I felt bad that, that it didn't work out, and that my parents had invested so much. But at the same time, it was just such a dire situation that I was relieved. And I was just excited to be back with my family. And also, we had come up with a plan as well for what I would do when I got back, which I think was a good thing because that way I wouldn't just be like not knowing what to do. And that's kind of when we decided like, okay, well, if I'm going to come back, I should still continue um, school, obviously. And I had always actually kind of wanted to go to San Jose State because they also had a nutrition program. So I do remember in high school considering going there. And I liked that it was close to home and it had a nutrition program. And so part of the plan was to take a quarter off, kind of unwind, and then I decided I wanted to continue in San Jose State. But in order to do that, I had to go to De Anza first. So yeah, I felt really bad that it didn't work out, but I was excited. I was excited that I was going to be moving back home. I was going to be with my family. I was going to be with my boyfriend. I was going to be with my dog. And I think the way I came to the conclusion of moving into journalism was because, number one, I was better at writing than I was at science. And number two, um, I really liked food content on YouTube, blogs. I always thought that was super, super cool. I wanted to eventually do something like that for myself. And I felt that journalism was the closest thing to that. You would learn to write articles, you would learn to make videos, and I felt like I could apply those skills to my little niche of what I like to do. And as you mentioned, I am a very practical person, very hands-on. Now I was going to go to a liberal arts school, and journalism, it's very hands-on. You're interviewing people and, you know, you're like out in the world, which I thought was pretty cool, creating content basically. So yeah, I felt bad that it didn't work out, but I was excited to be back home to start something different that more suited the way that I like to learn, and it felt more applicable to the things that I was passionate about.
How was community college different from UC Davis?
It was a lot better for me. Obviously, everybody's different, but I liked it a lot better. I liked being at home, of course. I liked that the students there seemed to be more diverse, so you're not just getting a bunch of kids that are straight out of high school living in the dorms. You're getting all kinds of people. Sometimes there were older people, sometimes there were parents, sometimes, and it was just more diverse and just people from more different backgrounds, and I just felt like it was just a more down to earth atmosphere, which I really really liked. um, and then also just going from taking research based classes to taking more practical classes, it just felt a lot more doable for me. I was wrapping my head around the topics, I was grasping everything a little better. So yeah, it was better in that aspect. It was still tough because I think in general I just didn't enjoy college. I don't enjoy sitting and doing homework, but it was a lot better.
I'm glad that that worked out for you. So now we've heard about UC Davis, we've heard about your community college, De Anza. Now just like spill it for us. Like, what were the three schools that you attended?
So at De Anza, I majored in journalism so that I could get into the journalism program at San Jose State. So I went to De Anza for a little bit. Then I think I was there for like a year. And then from there, I transferred to San Jose State, which is eventually where I got my degree. And that's where I did journalism there as well. And also through journalism, met a lot of cool people. I don't know. I don't really know what it was, but I just clicked with people there better. Maybe it was also me being in a better headspace.
Yeah.
It was still a struggle though. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, college was just not really my thing. I still ended up on academic probation, unfortunately, at San Jose State, but I finished.
And I remember that you got support more proactively
Yeah,
at San Jose State
yeah.
too. Talk to us about that.
So when I was on probation in Davis, it was kind of like, okay, you're on probation. If you don't get your grades up, you can't go here anymore. And that's it. But at San Jose State, when I was put on probation, I had to take a class for students that were in that situation. And class focused on like studying tips. It was like to help you with school. And so, yeah, I did feel a lot more supported. And then I had to go to like study sessions or something like that. So it was just more structured, more support. I felt a little bit more like they cared. And I feel like it helped to be with other people who were in the same situation, because then I didn't feel like I was the only one.
I think that's an interesting difference between the schools too. You would imagine that a school like UC Davis would have all this support available to you, and I'm sure they did, but it seems like they had more of an approach of like, hey, you are an independent person, like you take care of it. Like, you on probation, you need to fix it, and we have resources, go find it. But San Jose State was a bit more like kind of in your face about the help. Like, hey, you're on probation, and here are the things that you got to come to so that you can fix the situation and do better. So it was much more proactive, is what it seems like.
Yeah, and again, that's another thing where you got to know yourself. Is I'm kind of like that, where I really need structure, but some people are not like that. Some people don't like that. Some people really like independence.
Yeah.
So that's also something you got to know about yourself.
And I think, it says a lot about you that you still persisted despite being on academic probation twice. like you said, like just learning in the traditional sense that we have in higher education, like doesn't really work for you. And that's okay. Like it sucks that right now our system only has like basically lectures where you listen and then you regurgitate. So, it sucks that it happened, but it's good to know that that's just not how you learn and you were still able to finish your degree in the end anyway. So for anyone who has ever struggled in school, I'm sure there are a lot of people. Don't feel discouraged. It just kind of can be part of the process sometimes because our higher education system has such a narrow view of what learning looks like. So I would say you're not the problem. Maybe higher ed's the problem. So you went to Davis and then you went to De Anza. You already told us how the vibe and just everything was different between Davis and De Anza. What was San Jose State like? How was it similar or different from both De Anza and UC Davis?
I would say San Jose State was more similar to De Anza than it was to Davis. I felt like they were kind of the same vibe. Um, Maybe it had to do with just me being in my hometown. And I'm not no shade towards Davis or anything. I just clicked with the people at San Jose State better. I just felt like they were more down to earth. I do feel like same as Deanza, it was just a little more diverse. And I don't mean that necessarily in like ethnicities or anything, but just, just the backgrounds of people and, the age groups. And um, it's also, you had some people that were living in the dorms, but you also had a lot of commuters, so it was like a good mix. And it was a little more, I guess, rigorous, you could say. I feel like a difference between like the community and state school.
Now, in your story, you told us about three different schools that you had gone to. How much time passed between from when you started at UC Davis to when you graduated San Jose State?
So it was a total of 6.5 years. So I went to Davis for 2.5 years. Then I took a quarter off. Then I went to the Anza for about a year. So that's like 3.5. And then I went to Davis, I think, for 2 years.
San Jose State.
I mean, yeah, San Jose State. I think for 2 years.
That adds up
5.5.
to about
Yeah,
5.
yeah. So not 6.5, but like 6 years.
Gotcha. Okay, so you went to school for 6 years, which is a lot. However, most people do not finish their 4 year degrees in 4 years. So let's also do a little myth busting here for everyone. One, there's a common misconception that most people move away from their hometowns to go to college. I did a little research before this, and it turns out that actually over 50% of people don't move more than an hour away from where they live to go to college. And that's according to a 2023 study conducted by the Institute of College Access and Success based in California and in Washington, D.C. So most people don't actually leave their homes or they don't move away more than an hour to go to college. I also saw that I think between 30 and 40% of students do end up moving away or move out of state. Regardless, the percentage of people who actually move away from school to go to college is the minority. So you, Anna, you are an example of students who stayed closer to home and who wanted to stay closer to home. And that is not an exception, it is actually the norm. It probably felt for a long time like, ooh, I'm like the only one who like doesn't want to leave or who is gonna stay. You were actually the majority. Two, the myth of like, once you pick your major, you have to stick with it. No, people change it all the time, and you had that journey as well. And then the other myth is that, you graduate in 4 years, and that is unfortunately decreasingly common for a lot of different reasons. Financial challenges, life challenges, coming in and coming back out from school. But most people actually finish their 4 year degree in about 5. So you weren't off by too much. Even though you went to 3 different institutions, you finished almost pretty much on time is what most people do. So just want to bust these myths because I think Anna is a great example of how just we have so many preconceived notions of what college experiences can look like, but they really are so varied and they can take all these twists and turns. Talk to us about graduation. What was that like? What did it feel like?
So graduation initially, it was actually a little bittersweet because unfortunately, on my last year at San Jose State is when COVID happened. So I had to move to online learning, which was another obstacle. Um, and by the time I finished my graduation, it was still COVID. And so my graduation was very sad um, after that struggle of like 5 years or whatever we had decided it was. Our graduation was literally like a 2 minute video and then a slideshow of all the names. And then you had like a pre recorded audio of somebody saying your name, and that was it. So that sucked. But luckily, once everything opened back up, the following year did a proper ceremony for us. And so that was very gratifying. Of course, not everybody decided to walk. For some people, that's not very important. But to me, it was like a big achievement just because it had been such a struggle. I really wanted to do the ceremony, and so I did. And it was great. My whole family was there. My grandma was there. She got me a little teddy bear with the graduation cap that I still have to this day. And yeah, I mean, it was satisfying. I was just excited to be done because um, it was tough.
That is very real, but I'm glad that your in person graduation was an opportunity for you to be able to really just close that whole cycle and like reflect on all the hard work that you did and all the things that you overcame and just finally be done. It was a little frustrating. I was like, seriously, of all the people, like my sister who's like been through it is the one that gets the virtual graduation. I was so mad. But you did get to have the in person one and that one was super nice.
Yeah,
You had like all your chords and like all your flowers and stuff, and that was super fun.
yeah,
I think sometimes people are like, "Oh, I'm not gonna go," like it's kind of whatever, but like
yeah.
you worked so hard, and it really just is a moment for you to reflect on everything that you overcame to hit this huge milestone.
And I also did my Anza ceremony. I mean, I thought they were both worth celebrating. It was
For sure.
the same situation as the San Jose State. It was just such a struggle for me, so I wanted to be able to celebrate. I always like to find a reason to celebrate, so it was nice.
Yeah, and I always tell people to celebrate their educational achievements too, because
Mhm.
it can be easy to be like, "Oh no, it wasn't that bad," because like I was just sitting and reading, but that's hard. Sorry?
It's a pretty big deal, in my opinion.
It is a big deal. Okay. Tell us what's next for you. The journey is not over. I know that there's, still a lot to figure out, but tell us now that all of that is has passed and it's complete. Tell us a little bit about where you are now and where you're headed next.
So after my graduation, I had always been passionate about culinary. So I really wanted to honor that part of myself
Hmm.
and like reward myself for getting through college, which was not really my favorite. And so after I graduated, I really, really wanted to try something for me. And so I had decided to go into try a culinary job. And I had told myself I want to get industry experience in culinary. And then eventually I want to create my own food content using the skills that I learned with my journalism degree. So that's how I ended up at Susie Cakes being a baker. The experience that I got there as a lead, I feel that that is what opened up the opportunity for me to get to the job that I have now, which this job that I have now, considering the culinary industry, it's pretty good. It has a pretty good pay compared to other culinary job schedule. And so I feel like if it hadn't been for the experience that I gained at Susie Cakes, I wouldn't have gotten this job. And this job, now that I feel a lot more balanced and less burnt out, I feel like I really will be able to do, my personal projects on the side. And that's why I'm excited to be on this podcast because you're doing the same thing, but with your own niche. you know? And so I would like to do something similar, but with food and stuff, and use my journalism application skills and just create my own content. And I feel like in the past, I tried, but I was overthinking it way too much. I'm a big overthinker and a big procrastinator and a big perfectionist, which is also what contributes to the procrastination. And I think just because there's so much food content out there right now, I always felt very intimidated. Um, and I'm also not a big social media person, so that also kind of got in the way. But now I'm a little more in the attitude of like just having fun with it and just posting random stuff and see where that goes. And so now that I have more free time, I feel pretty optimistic. And I've already started posting more things, related to baking and cooking. So, yeah, I want to, with this job, start saving up and, start doing my own things on the side and combine, you know, my culinary skills and also my writing skills. I read a lot of food magazines. I would love to be able to contribute some articles to some magazines at some times or make my own videos, make my own posts. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. And I feel pretty optimistic that I'm going to stick to that plan. I feel like throughout with this college experience and then with my culinary experience, I've learned a lot about myself and about what I want and about what I'm passionate about and about what I'm good at, what works for me and what doesn't. So I would love to be able to work for myself at some point. Some people that I really admire, that I aspire to be like, um, are, for example, like Martha Stewart, except for the jail part. Um, she has her magazine. Uh-huh.